When you think of Las Vegas, you picture the dazzling lights, the endless energy. But what if I told you that beneath that glittering surface, there are some serious signs of trouble? Right now, the city is in a bit of a slump, and at the very center of it all is one of its most iconic names, Wynn Resorts. They're facing a mountain of debt, and the story really starts with one single number.
11%. That's the drop in visitors to Las Vegas this June compared to last year. And look, that is not a small dip. That's a huge red flag, a serious decline that you can feel on pretty much every block of the Strip.
So, how did we get here, and what does it all mean? Well, here's what we're going to break down. First, we'll look at why that Vegas spark seems to be fading. Then, we'll see how that's putting a giant like Wynn in a serious squeeze. After that, we'll jump over to its big gamble in Macau, analyze its high-stakes strategy to get through this, and finally, ask the big question, is this luxury empire standing on thinner ice than ever before?
All right, first up, let's talk about this city itself. Because what you see, all that neon and energy, it's starting to hide the fact that this is a city under some very, very real pressure. This quote just nails it. This isn't some sudden dramatic crash. It's more of a slow burn, a gradual decline. But the consequences? Oh, they are absolutely real. And you can measure them in quieter casinos and emptier restaurants.
So what does that actually look like on the ground? Well, for starters, prices for everything are just soaring. On top of that, those high-spending international tourists from Asia and Europe, they still haven't really come back in full force. And this is huge. Non-gaming revenue, money from shows, food, shopping, is down 8 to 12%. The middle class, the people who really drive the city's economy, are cutting back. And the result? A nightlife that's just a little dimmer and a lot more empty tables.
Okay, so let's connect the dots. How do all these problems you see on the street actually ripple up and hit a company's balance sheet? Well, it's creating this massive structural squeeze for one of the biggest names in town, Wynn Resorts. And here it is. This is the number that really defines Wynn's entire problem right now. The company is carrying over $10.5 billion in debt. When you're dealing with a number that big, you are incredibly vulnerable when the city you depend on starts to slow down. And this chart, it just perfectly illustrates that squeeze we're talking about. The company's profit margin has been sliced in half, falling from around 10% to under 5%. That's not just a bad quarter, folks. That's a sign of some deep structural pressure. Costs for everything from labor to energy are going up, while the money coming in just isn't keeping pace. And if that wasn't bad enough, get this. Wynn's net income fell by more than 40% in its latest quarter compared to last year. I mean, we're not talking about a small dip here. That's a massive drop that shows you just how intense the financial strain has become.
And if you want a real cautionary tale, just look at their competitor MGM Resorts. Their net income recently plummeted 75% in a single quarter. Now, think about this. MGM is way more diversified than Wynn's. So if a company with a much broader business can get hit that hard, it makes Wynn's more focused bet on just Las Vegas and Macau look even riskier.
And speaking of Macau, let's turn our attention there. For years, Macau was Wynn's golden ticket, right? It was this financial safety net that could balance out any weakness in Vegas. Well, those days are over. Now, it's become its own high-stakes gamble. Now, if you just glance at the numbers coming out of Macau, everything looks fine. Revenue is pretty much flat compared to last year. And that sounds like good news, doesn't it? Yeah, about that stability is pretty much an illusion. Because underneath that calm surface, the foundation is starting to crack. The reality in Macau is way, way more volatile than those headline numbers want you to believe. Here's the deal. That high-roller VIP gaming isn't the reliable cash machine it used to be. The casino's hold, that's just the percentage of money they keep from the big tables, has become super unpredictable. You throw in rising costs, tough new regulations, and all the uncertainty around China's slowing economy, and suddenly Macau is no longer a guaranteed win. It's a total wildcard. So, with all this pressure mounting in both Vegas and Macau, what's Wynn's game plan? What are they going to do? Well, they're not backing down. They're responding with a really bold, really high-risk strategy. They are doubling down on exclusivity. Okay, so their playbook basically has three main moves. First, they're buying back their own stock, a classic move to signal confidence to Wall Street. Second, they're leaning even harder into pure luxury, focusing everything on that super elite group of wealthy players. And third, they're looking for new horizons, expanding into places like the Middle East, hoping a whole new region can protect them from the volatility they're seeing now.
Now, this right here is the heart of their gamble. On the one hand, focusing on the super rich kind of makes sense, right? These are people who aren't really affected by inflation. But on the other hand, betting your entire company on a tiny niche group of people, that is incredibly risky. If that exclusive clientele decides to pull back for any reason, the whole thing could come crashing down.
Which brings us to the bottom line. With all this pressure and this super high-risk strategy, how much of a financial cushion does Wynn actually have left? Let's take a final look and see if they really are standing on thinner ice. So let's break down the numbers. Wynn has about $1.9 billion in cash and another $1.2 billion in credit they can tap into. Okay, that sounds like a lot of money, right? But now compare that to its total debt of over $10.5 billion. That cushion can disappear in a flash if tourism in Vegas and Asia doesn't turn around, and soon.
And so this is the question we're left with. Look, Wynn has the brand, the amazing properties, the legacy. But with slowing markets, rising costs, and that massive mountain of debt, the company is facing a fundamental test of its entire business model. So you have to ask, is this iconic luxury empire, the one that really helped define modern Las Vegas, standing on thinner ice than ever before?